Hello and welcome to the Poultry Network podcast. I'm Tom Woolman.
I'm Tom Willings.
What do you know this week?
What do I know?
That's what people say, isn't it?
Yeah, what do you know?
Say, what do you know?
Yeah, I know it's been an awkward couple of weeks. Tom is what I know, and yeah, we've got eggs back in the media, but for the wrong reasons. We've got very comfortable with eggs being a superfood and eggs being great for the planet. There was news stories went there in the last few months about reduction in carbon footprint of a switch from brown to white. Yeah, lots of benign or positive stories, but yeah, the last couple of weeks have turned much more serious, much more difficult with imported eggs being identified as being the source of salmonella infections in the population. And
It was something that last week we almost consciously just steered away from with Barry, even though it was obviously in the media, because we thought actually the guest that we've got coming up today was someone that we thought would be good to give a full overview of what's happened and how is the industry responding, really. So delighted to say that this week we've got Chairman of the British Egg Industry Council, the BEIC, Mr. Mark Williams. A lot of people will know Mark, won't they? Because he has been a fixture for many, many years in the egg sector.
I'm smiling. I'm smiling. If you're only listening and you can't see it, then you wouldn't see me smile. But I would say I've never met anyone with quite the encyclopedic knowledge of every twist and turn of of a business, or in Mark's case, of an industry for I don't know how many years it is. I'm going to say it's got to be 30 years. And there's nothing that's happened in our industry that he does not know an awful lot about. So we've got the perfect man for the job today.
Mm-hmm. Let's get into the interview.
Before we get into the interview, quick message from me, Jake Davis, editor of Poultry Network. Firstly, a big thank you for supporting the Poultry Network podcast. Whether you listen to every episode, share it with colleagues, or you've only recently discovered the show, we really appreciate the support. Thank you. We now have a limited number of podcast sponsorship opportunities remaining for the rest of the year. Sponsoring an episode is a straightforward way. Before we get into the interview with Barry, which is well worth a listen, a quick message from me, Jake Davis, editor of Poultry Network. Firstly, thank you for supporting the Poultry Network podcast. Whether you listen to every episode, share it with colleagues, or have only recently discovered the show, we really appreciate it. We now have a limited number of sponsorship opportunities remaining for the rest of the year. Sponsoring an episode is a straightforward way to put your business in front of a highly engaged audience across the UK poultry sector. Your advert can be recorded by someone from your business, giving it a personal and authentic voice, or we can produce it and record it for you. We'll make the whole process simple, from agreeing the message through to getting it on air. To discuss availability and find out more, you can email me directly at jake@dmediagroup.com. That's spelled DEE mediagroup.com. Or you can find all our contact details on the Poultry Network website. Thanks again and enjoy the rest of the episode.
I'm very pleased to say that this week on the Poultry Network podcast, we are joined by Mark Williams from the BEIC. Welcome, Mark.
Good morning.
Yes. So Salmonella has been in the news. It's been in the news a huge amount, hasn't it? I know that you and the BEIC have been talking about Salmonella and about the risks of Salmonella, but it seems like this week the wider media has really woken up to the risks with the ongoing outbreak which is happening in the UK. Would you be able to just bring us up to speed with the latest? We're recording this on Friday, the 28th of August, but just bring us up really with the latest of your understanding of what's happening with the outbreak.
Okay, thank you, Tom. I think, ladies and gents, it's important to perhaps put a little bit of sort of history into this. So about a week and a half, the United Kingdom Health Security Agency issued a report on latest Salmonella incidents. And it was picked up by Reuters, who distributed a notice. That was picked up by the wider media. Unfortunately, whilst the Reuters report was actually right, some of the media didn't pick up the separation, the clear separation between imported eggs and British produced eggs. So going back to the UK HSA report, it was clearly fingering that the increase in salmonellosis amongst humans was due to imported eggs.
Can I just clarify what's HSA? The HSA?
United Kingdom Health Security Agency. That was a name change from Public Health England. They look after excuse me, they look after effectively the human health side, and obviously do a lot of work in terms of producing reports, dealing with cases of salmonellosis or any other sort of contamination, infections, diseases that affect humans.
And how bad are things at the moment? Because I've been hearing stuff even on the radio today about how the cases are growing, and I think I've heard there's been another death linked to the outbreak.
Well, what happened was yesterday, UK HSA issued an updated report, and what they've shown now that there are, whilst genetically distinct, there are 2 other clusters. And as you say, Tom, unfortunately, there's been another death in that. So we're running at around 470 cases of salmonellosis, 2 deaths, which is absolutely terrible, within 3 genetic clusters here. But again, the clear finger is being pointed at imported eggs, and very, very importantly, not UK produced eggs. So what happened a week and a half ago, and again, the ongoing with the UK HSA report yesterday, our team within the BEIC and British Egg Information Service, who handle our communications and promotion for Lion and Lion eggs and Lion egg products, we've been very, very keen to contact the media when they may have not put that clear differentiation in between UK produced and imported. And fair dues to the media, once they were contacted, they corrected that. The issue is, of course, some people would argue, well, the damage has already been done. To me, this is disgraceful that this should have been allowed to happen, quite frankly. We've been talking to government via meetings and in communication for a long time that our high standards here should be matched by anything that comes into this country. And clearly, as demonstrated by the 2 UK HSA reports, this simply isn't happening. And, our producers here in the UK have done a fantastic job in terms of reducing levels of salmonella to effectively negligible levels here in UK laying flocks, and therefore where eggs and egg products are consumed by consumers, effectively no salmonellosis in humans due to UK produced eggs. Fantastic job. They spent a lot of money and a lot of time, and we're hugely proud of them. And it must be really galling for producers out there on their farms to see the media reports that imported eggs are to blame for poisoning UK consumers. It is absolutely disgraceful.
Mark, do we know any more about the origin? There's been some speculation around Eastern Europe, and there are 3 strains of Salmonella quoted in the media coverage in the update this week. But do any of those bits of information correlate? Do they tell us where it's come from?
Well, you're right, Tom, that there are 3 clusters at the moment. They're all Salmonella enteritidis, okay, which is, as we all know, is a nasty when it comes to human health. And it is one of the 2 regulated Salmonella serovars, which are in the Salmonella National Control Programme, the other one being Salmonella typhimurium. I've been very careful in terms of media interviews, which I've done over the last week and a half, not to name or point fingers at the moment. All I will say is that there is a member state where public health reports, not just in this country, but in other EU member states, have sort of indicated that contaminated eggs may have arisen from there. And there is also a non-EU member state, there is also a non-EU country in Eastern Europe who has massively, or not quite doubled, the export of eggs from that country to the UK. This is shell eggs to the UK in the first 5 months of this year compared to the 5 months of last year. And if I was to say to you that that increase has, and of course it's very price competitive, those eggs, when they come into the UK, they're not produced to the same bird welfare standards as ours. And, you know, at this present moment in time, our public health authorities have not been prepared or have not been able to actually point the finger definitively at a particular country. But my hope, and I do believe this takes place from the work I did for BEIC before, and that was very much that where suspicion is there, our government will contact the government of a particular country and ask them to take action. That may not be done in the glare of publicity, but it would be done, okay? And that's quite important as well. Of course, once our government names a particular country, it then causes a further furore. You know, clearly that's something for our public health authorities and the public health authorities in the country indicated to deal with.
You've been as clear as it's possible to be without naming those countries. I think anyone listening to this will know precisely what you're referring to, and it touches on equivalence, and you mentioned it yourself, the equivalence of farming standards or the lack of equivalence and access to market that has been a hot topic in conversations that Tom and I have had with previous guests as well. Realistically, what kind of timescale do you think that there could be intervention by government authorities to bring the shutter down and to protect people against, you know, any potential risk that these imports might pose, and B, level the playing field from a production point of view, so eggs sold in this market are legally or produced to a standard that is legal in this market?
Okay, so when the scientific methodology of whole genome sequencing came into being. So that is widely used by public health authorities, and in particular in our country leads in many respects there. And I think as some of the reports from UKHSA will indicate, the fact that we use whole genome sequencing probably more than some other countries, it looks like we're picking up more cases. That's probably the way to describe it. I think for those who perhaps don't know what whole genome sequencing is, and I'm not a scientist or a vet, but effectively it means that if I had a farm and I was producing eggs, then I will be doing my regular operator samples under the National Control Program. If one of those samples tested positive for enteritidis or typhimurium, then APHA Weybridge will whole genome sequence it. If, for example, Tom, you ate an egg from my farm that might have been contaminated, and then perhaps you were at a wedding do or something like that, and perhaps you'd all eaten tiramisu made from raw egg, and there'd been a number of people made ill, then you would all go to your doctor, you would submit a stool sample, it would go through the public health process, and UKHSA would whole genome sequence it. So effectively, the smoking gun is found back at my farm. I can't hold my hands up then and say, not me, Gov, because it clearly indicates that there's a link there. The fact that our UKHSA are using whole genome sequencing to link, you know, in the initial report that was done a week or issued a week and a half ago, that linked it to an outbreak back in 2025. And at the footnote at the bottom of the report, there was, if you clicked on the footnote, it opened up the November 2025 report. And it indicated that there were certain food businesses that were supplied, I believe, by a common distributor. So questions would have been asked by that of that person as to where they were purchasing their eggs from. Now, let's be quite frank here. We are in the UK Last year, we were 89% self-sufficient. So let's round it up and say it's 90% self-sufficient. So that means that 1 in 10 eggs or egg products we eat in this country will be imported. And to put that into perspective, guys, we eat 14 to 14.5 billion eggs a year, okay? We produce 90% of them here in the UK. So we're importing, again, in round figures, about 4 billion a year. So 40 million a day, 4 million will be consumed, which are imported, all right? Consumers can be totally reassured that when they go into a British supermarket or a discounter or convenience store, they will be buying British eggs with the lion on them, and they know those eggs are safe. You know, lion is the gold standard for egg production anywhere in the world. However, if we're being brutally honest, the people who will tend to buy imported eggs will do so because of price, okay? And we know from a day-to-day currency fluctuations will influence what comes in and what doesn't. There is a non-EU country that has massively increased its exports to the UK. We, as BEIC, did had an economic report produced by Wageningen University in the Netherlands, and it shows that said country can produce shell eggs something like 25% cheaper than we can, and for whole egg powder, it was something like about 27% cheaper. I mean, there is no way that in a very price conscious sector, and that being the food service sector and processing sector, that UK producers are able to compete with that. So therefore, it is hugely attractive for people to go abroad and purchase their eggs.
But Mark, those eggs are travelling quite a long way. I mean, surely there's a reason why they're making it all the way over to our little island across the water. Why are they not landing in a market closer to home?
Well, at the moment, the country I'm referring to in Eastern Europe obviously has its own huge difficulties, and that country is an exporter of eggs and egg products. It has been for a considerable time at the moment. And of course, it can be very useful to be able to sort of earn currency from being able to export abroad there. That said country was supplying the EU for ever since their big problem started. The EU then put import tariffs back in place because the number of exports were starting to affect the EU market. But because our government, and many would argue quite rightly, decided to help the country in their hour of need, our import restrictions were sort of still kept off. Okay, so import tariffs were kept off. So therefore, the UK has been a very attractive market for said shell eggs to come into us. Now, again, just for context, gentlemen, I mean, 64% of all the eggs produced in the UK will be sold at retail in shell. Okay, so we're not talking about this market. It's lion, it's safe eggs. When you get to food service, 20% of the eggs produced go there, and processing, it's 16%. You could argue, well, if there's a salmonella in an egg product, then pasteurization will sort that issue. But it's not just a question of salmonella here we're talking about, but these particular clusters are associated with so UK HSA say with cafes, takeaways, and sort of smaller food businesses. Okay, that is where quite a lot of shell eggs, imported shell eggs, will be landing. Okay, after they come into a wholesaler and then they're distributed out. And my belief is that the reason why those markets are so attractive to imported eggs is because it's price competitive for or distributors to use said eggs.
I was going to ask, Mark, I know there will be plenty of British producers of the lion cows who will say, and I have heard say in the past, that we should pull up the drawbridge and we should stop these sorts of imports and we shouldn't allow it. Now, I think we know that realistically, international trade is a fact of life, isn't it? And it's important as well that we have outlets for our eggs, and there is some product which can move. What more can be done at the border, and what are you asking government to do to tighten the controls over imported eggs that are coming into the country?
Well, certainly in the media interviews, which I personally have been doing, and colleagues as well, we've been making it very, very clear that we expect government now to tighten up their border controls. Okay. Now, as things happen at the moment, there is European legislation, egg marketing legislation, which requires certain checks to be made. We're not part of the EU anymore. So our government then has choices. Okay. So if eggs or egg products are coming from the EU, in theory, they are produced to the same standards. It's all covered by a national control program, but importantly, it's not Lion, because Lion is well above that, right? So there will be minimal checks made, okay? For non-EU countries exporting to the UK, the establishments have to be approved, okay? And for the country I referred to earlier, there is a list of approved establishments, which is published. But the key point here is that eggs coming into the UK from non-EU countries will be risk assessed. So they'll be high risk, or I'm talking about food products in general, high risk, medium risk, low risk, okay? Because eggs will be considered as low risk, I was hazard a guess that there are minimal checks taking place on eggs coming in from the country I referred to, okay? Now, what we've been calling for is quite simple, and you're right, Tom, successive governments have wanted to encourage international trade, okay? We're only 90% self-sufficient, so we can't supply UK means or needs at the present, so we have to import. My view, and whether it's doable or not depends on government's appetite to do something about this, and that is that when a truck comes into this country at the moment from abroad, and I'm thinking non-EU in particular here, it should be held while a sample of eggs is taken from that load and it is tested for salmonella, okay? Now, the issue is it takes 5 days for a salmonella test, and by the time you've got the eggs to the lab to be able to do that, it could be 6 days. Has government got appetite to hold a truck for 6 days? That is a question of government needs to answer. And it may have sort of more sort of political implications, again, from the exporting country there. But the point I made earlier, guys, is that it is simply unacceptable for all the great work that's being done by producers in this country and the wider industry, particularly for those people who are involved in the Lion scheme. And let's be honest, that's 95% UK egg production. To see all their hard work and efforts not totally undermined, but undermined a bit by imported eggs, which are quite simply poisoning our consumers. It shouldn't happen. It must not happen there. And I just want to give a big sort of a shout out, if I can, for our team at the BEIS. They've handled this incident absolutely impeccably. As soon as they realized that media were going off-piste and were not differentiating between UK produced and imported eggs, they were on the media straight away to correct that. And the key point here is the media have responded positively to that, and made sure they have corrected any sort of misconceptions there. And likewise, we've had we've been in contact with the Food Standards Agency at chief exec level. Myself and a colleague had a meeting with FSA a couple of days ago, which was very productive. And the result of that now is that the Food Standards Agency has slightly amended their advice to people eating out that, if you can't be sure that it's a Lion egg or a Laid in Britain assured egg that is being sold in a catering establishment, to avoid dishes which are made with raw egg, holiday sauce, and so on like that. So that's better, because one of the concerns we had last week was that the Food Standards Agency perhaps wasn't as clear as we would like them to have been, in terms of saying that consumers can ask when they buy eggs from a takeaway or they go to a cafe or whatever, where do your eggs come from? The line is on the shell. The producer code and the country of origin is on the shell there. So we thank the FSA for sort of clarifying that as well.
Food scares in the media that are involving our product but not involving our product is bad news, isn't it? But there is equally an opportunity here to double down on our points of difference, double down on the excellent work that you've talked about at farm level, and the rich history really that the Lion Code has got in protecting flock health, protecting human health. Will we see, do you think, a step up in terms of our assertiveness in promoting those points of difference? Will farmers and packers and processors, etc., involved with solely UK businesses kind of witness us trying to drive home that point that British and Lion is that gold standard that you talk about?
Absolutely, Tom. And in every problem area, there's always challenges, but there's also opportunities. And the opportunities from this are huge. And the fact that the media have been sort of very responsible in terms of how they are reporting this outbreak now and pointing fingers at imported eggs, it gives huge opportunities for the UK industry to promote its wares. And besides the great work that's being done to correct the media sort of misrepresentation that happened initially, we're now moving on to how we can reassure consumers, because the last thing we want to do now is put a question mark over the safety of British eggs. That's just not fair. It's going to cost us a bit of money. And in fact, this morning I had a meeting with our team to basically sort of just approve the first stage of the plan on how we need to do that and how we're going to do that moving forward in the coming days and weeks. So I think our producers in the UK who are part of the Lion scheme and the wider industry for that matter can be sort of rest assured that we're totally on the case here, batting their corner, and we'll make sure we continue to sort of bat their corner in the strongest possible way.
Sounds like a really positive place to leave it, Mark. Mark, thank you so much for joining us today while this news story sort of continues to rumble along. It's absolutely timely, and so very much appreciate you taking a bit of time out this morning and talking to us about it.
Pleasure.
Well, I thought it was so interesting, Tom, given that the BEIC has been warning of this for years.
Yeah.
It's what they've been talking about. It's what they've been lobbying about the threat of salmonella from imported eggs. And this is now kicking off. And I think the question is, depending on how the media have portrayed it, and Mark talked a little bit about how they've tried to be really proactive in terms of managing that messaging and correcting things that aren't quite right as it comes out,
with some success by the sounds of things as well. Yeah,
but
is the damage already done? Is the question, isn't it?
Yeah,
I suppose.
Yeah, that's it. Is will the mud stick? Will people turn away from eggs? What will the impact be? I was in a Premier Inn having some breakfast this morning, and everyone there was still having their fried breakfast. But yeah, how much damage will be done, or will it actually be a great opportunity for the sector to say, look at the differences between imported eggs and what we produce in this country, and actually can that help support the sector?
That's how I see it. That is absolutely how I see it. I think there are as Mark explained in the interview, there are many reasons that me and Lion stand apart from imports, and I'd be pretty confident that on the back of that kind of long-term message that the British Egg Industry Council have been giving to trade and giving to the consumer, that if you want safety and security, it needs to come with a Lion on it. that they can, without saying "I told you so," they can use this as that opportunity that you mentioned to further drive home that message. And I think there would be an enormous amount of support throughout the chain, from grassroots producer through to potentially even, I can't speak for everybody, but yeah, pop a hand in the pocket and find another couple of coppers to be able to make sure that we do that as an industry properly, because there can be no more important message, can there? And it's pretty competitive. This is pretty fundamental. We want the British consumer to eat British eggs with a lion code on it, whether they're cooking in their own kitchen or they're eating out and about, or they're grabbing a sandwich at lunchtime from somewhere. So yeah, opportunity is how I see it, rather than threat. Even though it's not news headlines that we want to be reading.
No, well, I do sincerely hope that you're right on this sector, because we talked. I'm thinking back to previous podcasts that we've done where we chatting to Paul Flintoff about his experiences of salmonella outbreaks on broiler flocks, and it's something that in the UK we do take seriously, and we are very proactive on whether we've been talking about it with regards egg imports, or I go back to the old chlorine chicken debate.
Yeah.
It seems like that hasn't been in the news recently, but the whole point of that is about controlling things like salmonella and the way that different countries go about things. So yeah, there was a stage, I think, where we almost felt like this was the Salmonella podcast, and we've almost got back to that stage again.
Yeah, let's change the subject for next week. Let's change the subject for next week. Next week, we've got a couple of things upcoming, haven't we? We've got the Poultry Network live conference, which you and I are going to be together, possibly even recording a live episode. So if you're listening to this on Friday and you fancy getting involved next week, come and find us. Yeah, what else have we got going on, Tom? Put you on the spot.
Well, I guess it's a good opportunity, isn't it, for people to subscribe to the newsletter if they're not able to come along to the conference. And I can quite understand why not everyone is able to crisscross across the country. Well, that was an interesting trip of phrase there, wasn't it?
Have another go.
Across the country to visit a conference. But if you don't, then you can subscribe to the Poultry Network newsletter, and you get it delivered to your email inbox every Friday with a little sort of bite-sized chunks of what's been happening in the poultry sector this week.
There we go.
So,
there we go.
Well, I look forward to seeing you in the flesh again.
As it were, yeah.
Will you be bringing an umbrella?
I don't know. I haven't looked at the forecast. Do I need one?
I think, as a precautionary principle, you should either bring an umbrella or a wide-brimmed hat.
Right. Thank you for the advice.
That's
I'm just hoping I'll recover from this dreadful affliction. I've got man flu at the minute. Not doing very well. Not very good at being ill. So I'm just hoping for a speedy recovery. I might be in some kind of, I don't know, sou'wester, trying to keep myself healthy and fit. But anyway, thank you for listening, as ever. Until next week.
Bye-bye.